When a classic sitcom ends before it should have, it's always a surprise. When it comes to Alf, a show about an alien living with a suburban American family after crashing into their garage, that may not be the case. The show ran from 1986 to 1990. Although the show was highly successful, it came to an abrupt end when Alf was canceled after the fourth season ended on a cliffhanger. Clearly, the creators of the show expected it to go on. So, with such an iconic leading alien, a setup for another season that looked to shake up the direction of the series, why was the sitcom so abruptly canceled? From on-set drama to technically demanding shoots, we'll dive into the real reason why Alf was canceled after 4 seasons. Alf's huge success was actually quite unexpected. When co-creator Paul Fusco and Tom Patchett pitched their idea about an alien living with a suburban American family to NBC executives, they expressed their disinterest. Fusco could see in their eyes they were losing them. Fusco was a puppeteer and voice of the alien Alf, so at that moment, he pulled the show's star out of his bag. He managed to impress the NBC heads by improvising with the Alf character. He performed jokes with the alien about the network and even roasted several of the executives. He had everyone in the room in hysterics. This was the exact thing that gave them the green light. The show Alf, titled after the alien's name, premiered in the fall of 1986. NBC was going through a rough patch and had failed with its recent programming. The new series, based around a sarcastic alien, appeared to be another misguided effort by the network. Early reviews of the show reflected this. Critics hated it. But the show had something and managed to find an audience. It was a full-fledged phenomenon by the time it hit its second season. The image of Alf was plastered over every kind of merchandise possible. Lunchboxes, trading cards, skateboards, even wristwatches. They released several albums by Alf. Stuck on Earth charted in Belgium, the Netherlands, Australia, New Zealand, and Germany. Alf even featured on the game show Hollywood Squares, where he was a regular celebrity guest. Believe it or not, the Alf craze could have gone further. Fusco opened up about nixing multiple major endorsements. He made a point to turn down any kind of endorsement where Alf would be telling someone to buy beer or hamburgers. This even included Budweiser and an Alf cereal by General Mills. Fusco always wanted to keep up the appearance that Alf was his own living, breathing entity. This came into account when NBC wanted Alf to host SNL. While the home audience wouldn't have seen Fusco, the studio audience would have. This was enough for him to turn it down. He also declined requests to appear on Late Night with David Letterman and a Muppets television special. One that Fusco did accept was to visit the White House by invitation of Nancy Reagan. It was for the 1987 Christmas party. Apparently, President Reagan said Alf was his favorite show. While the show's popularity was out of this world, it was also short-lived. By 1989, the ratings were declining, and once the fourth season was coming to an end, the network execs were unsure whether it would continue. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like, and subscribe to Trender if you haven't already. The success of the show compromised the premise. It was the simple yet constrictive premise of Alf that ultimately led to its cancellation. The show was built on Alf living secretly with a suburban family, which limited the show to the family's house. At times, they'd bring in new characters in an attempt to keep things fresh, but eventually this became stale. While it was popular, it was also quickly becoming boring, whether the audience understood why or not. Trying to keep the episodes exciting, they even had one where Alf met someone who was drunk. The writers quickly became desperate for new ideas while keeping to the rules of the show. A spin-off with the main character Willie Tanner's brother was also an idea for a new direction, but it never happened. Most of the cast wanted the show to end. While there were several characters on the show, particularly in the Tanner family, the puppet was the star. This led to many of the actors being bored or downright unhappy while working on the series. This was particularly felt by Max Wright, who played Willie Tanner. Though he was the lead, it was the puppet who stole the show. Wright was particularly bothered by the fact that the puppet was given all the funniest lines. Wright was an actor born and bred in the theater. With that in mind, it's safe to say starring on Alf was not exactly what he envisioned for his career. Lisa Bannock, one of the writers, described writing for Max Wright was like playing a synthesizer. Wright would play every comma, ellipsis, and dash that was put on the page. In contrast with this process was Fusco, who would use the director of the show to give notes to Wright while he was hidden away puppeteering Alf. He would give notes like telling Wright to pick up the pace. Director Paul Miller dreaded such circumstances, as it would often create a problem with Wright, who began to act like a diva when he became less and less happy on the show. His energy continually clashed with Fusco, who at times was demanding and impatient with people on set. Bannock opened up about Fusco's on-set behavior, stating he was in a trench for 5 to 6 hours with his arm in the air controlling a puppet. Then he'd head into his office and make calls to Make-A-Wish kids. The schedule was grueling for him and everyone on set. It was inevitable that personalities clashed. Actress Anne Shadeen, who played Kate Tanner, summed up the experience of the show with the fact there was no joy on set and it was a technical nightmare. While extremely slow, hot, and tedious, a 30-minute show took 20 to 25 hours to shoot. There was even a circumstance when Benji Gregory, the child actor who played Wright's on-screen son Brian, messed up his line. Wright lost it on the 9-year-old actor, screaming at him while he cried. Some on-set frustrations also stemmed from the technicalities of working alongside a puppet, whose handler required holes in the set floor that he could work through. This meant the cast had to memorize their movements while also minding some dangerous hazards. One of the more famous on-set arguments occurred when actress Shadeen and Dean Cameron, who played Robert Sherwood, questioned whether they were needed on set while a scene was being blocked. This aggravated Wright, who was always a hard worker, and led him to challenge both of the actors on set's work ethic. It didn't take long for them all to be screaming at one another, and the set had to be cleared. It was roughly 4 years of a miserable cast stuck together on set. Wright described it as hard work and very grim. He was hugely eager to have it over with. How the show ended. Since its cancellation was unknown at the time of writing and shooting Season 4, Alf's writers came up with a cliffhanger for the season's final episode. This was an attempt to open up the premise of the show for Season 5. In the show, Alf tried and failed to contact Australia by using a ham radio. While doing so, he intercepts a coded message sent by his old alien friends. They invite Alf to join them on their planet, New Melmac. He accepts and decides to leave. His surrogate family, the Tanners, drive him to a secluded field and say their goodbyes. But just when the spaceship's lights approach, the U.S. military alien task force arrive on the scene. This scares off the approaching alien ship, and they capture Alf. The episode ended with a title card saying, "To be continued," but Alf was canceled. This was disappointing for Fusco, who had been given a verbal agreement that Alf would receive a 5th season. The cliffhanger gave the show a new direction for the future of the series. The concept was Alf would be housed at a military base and driving everybody crazy. But as networks do, they changed their minds and decided to cancel it. That fall, a different notable program would debut in Alf's old time slot, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think it was the right time to cancel Alf, or would you have liked to see the new direction the show would have taken in the 5th season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Trender if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.